this morning, and we know one of the big headlines has been that there was a break in intelligence sharing between the U.S. and the U.K. British authorities complaining that U.S. officials were leaking details they weren't ready to make public. How unusual is something like this?
Well, yeah, it is very unusual, actually. The US and the UK have about as close an intelligence sharing relationship as exists out there. So the fact that this became public, the fact that the Home Secretary spoke about it, the fact that the Prime Minister mentioned that she was going to talk about this with President Trump was a sign of just how serious this was and just how upset the British were that leaks were coming from the US side that they believed were actually impacting the course of the investigation.
So when we think of the culture of covering news and how different it is in the U.S., and certainly how different we just witnessed what happened with the president's overseas trip, but the decision to publish the name of the suspect and photographs of that crime scene, was the leak somehow malicious or naivete from a new administration?
I would tend towards naivety. I think that the main concern from the British point of view, the name coming out before the British authorities were ready was especially important, because at that point they hadn't made the arrest they wanted to. They were closing in on Abedi's cell and his network around him, but by that name coming out early, the UK feared that Abedi's associates would be able to scatter, essentially, go to ground, and they feared that they may then forward some of their plans and carry out an attack. So it could have had very serious consequences, and obviously we hope it doesn't.
So when we think about the other times we've seen some issues with classified information, whether it's President Trump in the Oval Office divulging classified information to the Russians concerning our allies in Israel, what's more egregious at this point? The fact that the president has shared intelligence with that many, or the fact that we learned about all of this in such a public and damning way toward this administration?
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to rank the mistakes, but they certainly were mistakes. I think it's important to remember that, I mean, this is the law of physics when it comes to intelligence work. If intelligence is passed on from one country to another, it's done so with a very clear expectation that that will remain secret. And as soon as that law is as soon as that unwritten law, that principle is broken, then of course the country passing on the intelligence is going to be a lot more reluctant to do so again in the future.
Robin Simcox. Robin, nice to have you with me. Thank you, sir. I appreciate it. All right, so the question that a lot of folks are asking, who is the real Jared Kushner? What do we know about him? We're going to speak to a writer who profiled